Yeah, well, so switching over to Ukraine now.
Yeah.
Recently, Ukraine made, I guess they had their Trojan horse moment, right? They snuck in all these drones into Russia and trucks and Iran. I'm sorry. See, this is what happens when you start going all over the world.
Yeah.
And so, recently, Ukraine snuck a whole lot of drones into Russia in trucks that then opened and they attacked all these different bombers, and the Russian, Air Force, taking a lot of them out. It didn't really do too much, I don't think, because Russia was still, throwing a salvo of, munitions over into Ukraine the very next day, to avenge itself. But it showed people that again, Russia's not inevitable, right? And there's a lot of it can die, by cuts, in a thousand places, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weaknesses that it has, and you can only be an octopus that spread yourself out too wide without exposing yourself to too many risks. And could you imagine if Georgia rose up, or if one of these other, stands rose up? I think Putin could have just bitten off more than he could chew, so to speak, with when it came to attacking, Ukraine. But one of these weaknesses that they exposed was a vulnerability where Ukrainians were able to outmaneuver, bring in, covert ops, bring in spies, and bring in these drones to attack from inside Russia. That must put some fear in the Russian people, to think whether or not this is all worth it and whether or not they're safe. I think that was the message anyway that Ukraine was trying to send. Um, but that hasn't really gone much, further than that from last I had heard. What's your takeaway from some of these points? It just seems to be escalating to me. Trump was supposed to be getting these, to the table. There was supposed to be the talk in Turkey. I think you and I spoke about this right before, on the eve of that last summit, and it never happened. Or I guess it did happen, but nothing came of it. I think the only thing I saw recently, they were exchanging dead bodies. Literally, there were 600 bodies being and prisoners being exchanged between the two sides. But that this war just seems never to be able to come to an end. And I blame Putin. But why? What's your takeaway from all of that?
Well, Zelensky today is in with the G7, so they're
Yeah.
talking about this, so it's timely. One thing that's happening is the way Putin is funding the war is through illegal sales of oil and gas, minerals and so on, but oil and gas in particular. So there are sanctions being applied by Western countries, but he's getting around the sanctions using older ships. And apparently an example that I read about was oil is being shipped to Singapore and then transferred to Chinese ships that take it into China. So Russia's exporting to Singapore, and in the ports they transfer it to Chinese ships and take it into Russia. So there's an increasing effort by the G7, apparently being discussed, to clamp down on the sanctions. But a key statistic has been that Russia made 3 times more in the course of this war in oil sales than the amount that the entire Western based group that has been helping Ukraine has given to Ukraine to defend itself financially. So there's more work to be done in
Yeah.
terms of applying the sanctions. But it's also true that Russia now has lost over 1 million soldiers invading Ukraine. 1 million. Those numbers exceed the numbers in World War II. They're getting up to the numbers that, of countries like the entire U.S. loss in World War II was a fraction of that.
Yeah.
So it's significant. And Ukraine, of course, is losing also people. I don't know what the numbers are, but I imagine maybe 300,000. You know, it seems like for every soldier Ukraine loses, they've said, like they're speculating they're up to 10 soldiers are lost on the Russian side. But these soldiers are not Russians from Moscow who drink coffee in the coffee shops of Moscow. They're from the Far East somewhere. You mentioned the stands and potential, some disruptions over there. There's some whisperings and some news from Kazakhstan that Kazakhstan has taken a step away from Russia and is sort of piping up about what's going on with the war in Ukraine. But it's early days. I don't know
Yeah.
what will happen. The projection of some people who are experts on the economics of Russia. I heard projections that come July, August, Russia's economy could collapse. But who's to say? How do you know? There's projections.
Yeah.
Putin has got some terrible illnesses and going
I
about
heard
that.
that last year. Yeah.
Then on the other hand, you look at Trump. Sometimes you think, geez, he's 79. I mean, like, how does he looks a little pale sometimes. So who knows?